Our expert speaker is Dr. Jasmine George. She's a native of Virginia Beach, Virginia, and she's also a three-time graduate of historically Black colleges and universities, aka HBCUs. Dr. George received her Bachelor of Science in Biology from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, her Master of Science in Biomedical Research at Morehouse School of Medicine, and her Doctor of Philosophy in Biomedical Science at Morehouse School of Medicine, where she was also a RISE Fellow. After her MSM tenure, Jasmine accepted the Louis Sullivan Fellowship at Research America, where she completed a self-directed project that focused on the workforce diversity as a measure to improve health outcomes in diverse communities. She currently serves as the Senior Manager of Advocacy Programs at Research America, where she oversees the logistics and planning of Research America's signature advocacy programs, which are the Early Career Researchers Summit, that's usually held in the summer, the National Health Research Forum, which we just had in the fall, and the Advocacy Awards, which will be coming up in the spring and March. In her spare time, she enjoys video games, reading, and music. And as I recall, I think Jasmine also really loves Dungeons and Dragons. Is that correct, Jasmine? Is that still valid?
Very valid.
Okay, great. So I'll hand it off over to Jasmine to take it away.
Thank you so much, Lori, for the introduction. I, once again, am Dr. Jasmine George, Senior Manager of Advocacy Programs here at Research America. So we're going to talk a little bit today about event planning and how you can, the steps that you need to take in order to successfully plan and execute and evaluate an event. So here is a process overview in planning and executing an event. You would need to consider 5 overarching themes: the goal, the budget, the audience, the speakers, and the logistics. So starting with goal, you want to think through what is the purpose of your event. I mean, because you all have applied for and successfully gotten the microgrant. This is a little bit easier for you because you have an idea of what direction you want to go, and we also have an idea of what direction you want to go, but you really want to hone in on the purpose of your event because that will help determine the type of event you hold, and also your expected outcomes. Second thing to consider is the budget. Again, budget constraints will determine if you have a in-person event, the scale of your event, whether you have a virtual event, what type of medium is correct for you, and also a ways who to invite and how to overall execute your event. So one of the key things here I want you all to kind of keep in your mind is to always consider ways to cut down costs. Even when you're working with a large budget, such as one for Research America senior signature programs, you still want to think of creative ways to kind of cut down costs and always have in mind that you want to come in under budget. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So next is your audience. Thinking through it kind of goes in with your goal, but thinking through with your audience, you really want to determine what do they expect to get out of this? What do you want them to get out of this? And how can you channel your communication to reach the right people? And so we'll kind of talk through some ways to both to conduct some outreach and picking up the format and people you want to engage with. Next, speakers. Speakers are like one of the most important things to an event. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be your draw for for your audience. Like if you get large names, for instance, with the advocacy awards, we focus primarily on kind of later career scientists and things like that. Big names that will draw in attendees. And so you really want to be smart about your speakers, and that can also help your budget. And we can talk a little bit about that as well. And finally, logistics, task management, assignments, pre, post, and during event needs. I've pretty much laid out all of these things, but the overarching idea is that you want to stay organized and make sure that you have laid out as many things as possible in your pre part of the event so that the during and post is a little bit easier. And the last thing is don't forget to have a backup plan, especially if you are doing an in-person event. You always want to make sure that you have a plan for bad weather. You have a plan just in case the venue has any problems. You always want to make sure that you have a backup plan to your plan so that you can just ensure event success and smooth success and running of your event. So let's set the stage for how to conceptualize your event. So here are some things you would want to consider. What problem are you trying to solve? You always want to keep in mind the goal of your event at the top of mind, and that will kind of guide you on how to execute your event. Think of who your audience will be. Are you speaking to fellow scientists, legislators, community partners, health workers, a combination of these? Kind of having a mind for who your audience will be will help you determine speakers because you don't want to pick like the wrong speaker for this event and attract the wrong people. You also want to tailor it to your message. So who is your message for? Always have that in mind. If you are speaking with representatives from a state or local government, because I know for the microgrant, you're required to kind of incorporate the legislative uh, people. Have in mind your current legislative schedule if you are planning to invite people from the state or local government, because that will really determine who you can draw in and how you advertise, and getting that done as early as possible just helps to ensure the effectiveness and smoothness of your planning. And so lastly, imagine a persona. Who do you want to reach? Having that in mind is also where do they get their information from? So if you are trying to reach, for instance, people within your own student space, you probably want to engage with media that is reflective of that. So social media is probably a good way to go. Um, campus flyers, things like that. So it kind of ties in together to think and imagine your persona and where they would get their media from and kind of go from there. So with the microgrant, you have an idea of the amount of money that you can work with. So you can plan your budget kind of around that number, which is great. So from there, you can kind of prioritize some of the necessary items and assess how much you want to spend your money wisely. In that vein, we would really want to think in terms of do you want to do an in-person or virtual event? We'll go a little bit into the types of virtual events very briefly, but here um, I will say that virtual events tend to be cheaper and more cost effective because you can reach wider audiences. You can, you know, cut down on, event costs like catering and snacks and things like that. You don't have to deal with some of the finer, minute details such as badges and signage. And, it's just a more effective and cost effective way of doing things. However, if you prefer more in person, um, one-on-one, you want to think through your catering and snacks, your badges, your signage, your swag bags or takeaways, things that really round out your event and make it marketable and kind of interesting to for attendees, and that will ultimately help the success of your event. So here you notice I have speaker honorariums. This is where I like to tell everybody that, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but state and federal officials cannot legally accept monetary gifts. So that kind of incentivizes you guys to, think creatively with your speakers and, really lean into those legislators as a way to kind of offset the costs of some of your speaker honorariums. And I also suggest to preset your honorarium types because several times in my experience with planning events, if you don't preset the honorariums, the speaker is liable to come back to you and say, hey, we want to do this for X amount of money. And that's easy way to go out of your budget. So doing things like that, like presetting and considering these things within your budget early will help you to, one, determine who you want to reach out to and target your outreach a little bit better, and also help you to assess the way that you want to spend your money. So a key strategy when knowing your audience is creating an outreach plan. A lot of you all are students, so you have access as a student to things like the campus newsletters and scientific societies that might have student news boards, uh, and just general things that can widen your audience pool. And I encourage you all to really tap into those types of things. One of the things, an example of this, when I was in graduate school, I did a outreach program for HBCUs, and mind you, I was just a student, didn't know anybody in the HBCU space. So, and me and my friends knew that we had a very low budget. And so one of the things that was very effective for us was setting up meetings with those key faculty members that might have a wide network of students to try and boost the visibility of our event. Hey, we really want to do something around science policy for HBCUs. Is there a way that you can share this with students? And you guys as students, can know who those faculty members are, and really identify those people that could help, boost the visibility of your event. You also want to make sure that when you are doing your outreach plan, you have constant communication. Something that Research America does very effectively is communicate their events throughout the planning time. So early on in our planning timeline, really, really early, earlier than you would think, we sit down and we plot out every couple of weeks what kind of emails we want to send out, just kind of making people aware, refreshing the memories of a lot of the people who might have registered or who might have not registered, sending out emails to people to send things to their contacts. You want to keep in constant contact with the people you're hoping to reach, so that way they don't forget. Because, just because you said it once and you have your, beautiful email with the graphics and things like that doesn't necessarily mean that people will follow through. And very often times, especially with our larger events like the forum, I will get those last minute emails like, hey, I completely forgot to register, or hey, I completely forgot to go to this event. Is there any way I can you know, attend still? And so having that constant communication can kind of pick up your attendance, especially if your success, metrics of success rely on attendee conversion.
Jasmine, can I just jump in real quick and piggyback on what you just said?
Yeah.
Yeah. I really, really want to emphasize the point that Jasmine just made. I had a couple of one-on-one meetings with some of the my grantee groups already, and had said to one of the groups that for your event, you really want to be communicating early and often, right?
Mhm.
Um, don't be concerned or afraid that, oh my gosh, I'm sending this reminder email too much, or I'm like posting this reminder of the event too often. No, you want to do that. You want to be that like constant infomercial on in their brain, um, because that's how you're going to up your registration for the event. And I would just tell you, anecdotally, this year for the microgrant cycle, we had a record number of applicants. And that's because when I took over the microgrant program, when I onboarded Research America in August, I put a lot of effort up front in the recruitment process, early and often. And that's why we had a record number of applicants this year.
Yep. Yep, exactly that, Lori, exactly that. Don't feel like you're being kind of annoying, because the reality of it is a lot of people get these types of communications all the time. And so you want to just stay in front of your audience, especially if you don't necessarily know these people. Again, kind of going back to my experience with the outreach to other HBCUs, I did not know anybody at these schools. I only knew the people that I reached out to. And so to get people to care, we had to constantly communicate. Um, just either even what the program that we were trying to put on was, what kind of things it will include, our speakers, like really honing in on, constant communication. Don't do it every day, of course, but like again, how Research America sets it up is kind of bi-weekly to weekly emails. So something that is also helpful with getting visibility is personalizing some of the messages. So one of the ways that you can do that is better via email. So on email, you can set it up so you can set it up in Excel so that you have your preset personalizations, the emails that you're sending it to, and then the email content, and it will batch send it for you. We can walk through how to do that, but that's just one of the ways that you can do it. You can also BCC large lists. Like if you know that there's like a group on campus that is interested in policy, but is not directly related to you guys, you can say, hello, this group, and then BCC all the members, just kind of doing things to add like a bit of personalization will also help with visibility, because then people are like, oh wait, how do they know me? Or oh wait, I remember speaking to this person about this event, so let me go ahead and check it out, or let me share this. And so obviously communicate your venue, your time, and your date over the course of the communication schedule, even in the subject line. That's something that I learned very early on in my event planning experience, is that when you put your ask up front and put the date and time in the subject, people find it easier, and it's just much more visible for them, um, and easier to keep at the top of their mind. So kind of going a little bit more into promotion, as I said before, having your speakers in mind, and having like an idea of confirmed speakers helps with promotion, because down the line, as you're communicating, you can communicate, hey, this speaker has just agreed to sign on to the event. And that's kind of the point of this really lovely picture here on my right. We had Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Lewis Sullivan, who is like a huge, huge scientist and physician at one of our forums, and we knew that he would be a big draw, so we wanted to make sure that we confirmed him as early as possible so that we can put him inside of our promotions. And that really helped, because people, would email us back and be like, hey, when is Dr. Sullivan's specific, talk? Or, hey, we want to learn a little bit more about this event. We had no idea this person was coming. things like that. So confirming your speakers, or it doesn't have to be super, super early, but confirming your speakers overall can help with promotion, kind of tie into promotion. Using social media. I know you all are probably like, yes, of course we'll use social media, but using it, like for instance, to reach out to your networks to get people to reach out to their networks is also another very effective way. A popular social media that helps you to get visibility for more professional stuff is LinkedIn. I know that's like, kind of like the Facebook of social medias right now, but still, like it's a great way to get people who are focused because they're in your network already. So are focused on things that you might want them to be interested in. And they'll share it to their professional network and it'll kind of spiral from there. So I definitely recommend using social media. Another thing is permissible campus resources. You all are familiar with the respective newsletters that your campus might offer. Reach out to those people and say, hey, we have this event open to all students, or we have this event open to all faculty, whomever your audience is, and use that as a way to promote your event. And that kind of comes with, pre-planning in a sense, because newsletters have deadlines for things, and so you want to get that idea in early so that you're not like having a last minute promotion of your event. So one thing that I do want to bring up is that if you are planning to use any stock photos, my recommendation here is to make sure that you use free stock images, because it is very possible for you to accidentally like use something that's, you just don't want to get into the legal side of it. Just say that, because I've had instances where students were dinged for the use of copyrighted images, and that's just never fun because you have to go and change your entire brand. So, speaker and guests. So again, when you are talking with your speakers, you want to have the idea of the date, time, and logistics. So when you are asking them to speak, you can have that all up front. So what that looks like is, hi, Dr. Sullivan. We Research America is holding their annual National Health Research Forum on September 18th, 2025. I'm just throwing out a date there. At what time? At 3 to 5, let's say 3 to 5 p.m. Would you be available to participate in XYZ panel at XYZ time? You see, being very specific like that will help the person to assess whether or not it works. And you'll get an answer as fast as possible when you do it that way. You have the ask up right up front, and then you go in the subsequent paragraphs as to what the event is. Because people aren't going to really care about what the event is. They're going to care about when it is, where it is, and what they would need to do for it. So if you're doing outreach to higher level individuals, keep in mind the fact that they don't have much time. So you don't need to wax poetic about your event or its purpose. They can pretty much gather that just based off of the title, if the title is effective enough. And so keep it about a page or under a page. That's the best way to get people's responses, because if you send a person a block of text, they're not going to read that. They're not going to read it. So for elective officials, you want to first do a little scoping, find out who their government affairs staffer or scheduling staffer is so that you can CC them. Because another reality is that, especially when working with your state and local legislators who are very, very busy, especially at this time, you want to make sure that they get the information, because just because it hit their inbox doesn't necessarily mean that they'll open it. And so including their government affairs staffers or just scheduling staffer will help to just ensure that that information gets to them. And then again, having the ask right up front, 9 times out of 10, the scheduler is just going to copy and paste the ask into the into an email and shoot it to them and see what they say. So if you have a letterhead, that's another just finishing touch to kind of make your event seem more official. People tend to respond really well to branded things because it looks professional, especially if it looks professional. If it looks professional, they'll go, oh, okay, I recognize that this is a brand. They're not trying to scam me or anything. It's not a phishing email. You want it to seem as official as possible. And so having that letterhead or a logo or something will just add that extra touch that helps with visibility, especially with recruiting speakers, because speakers aren't going to, volunteer, especially if you're asking them to volunteer their time. They're not going to volunteer their time for something that they don't get a return on interest. So showing that you are an established group or that you have something behind you will help with visibility and help ensure that you get that yes for speakers, permitting their schedule. So I'll stop right there really quick, actually, because I want to see, if people are following, if you have any questions so far. Questions? Okay. Yeah.
I guess actually I'll jump in really fast and just wanted to see if you have any recommendations in terms of identifying speakers and like backup speakers as well. I feel like there's always like, kind of the main person that you're like, if they come, that'd be great. But then maybe how you decide to, if they're unable to come, who would be next?
Right. So that kind of goes back into your event goal and your audience. So, okay, I'll give you an example. The Programs Department of Research America is planning a Hill briefing on RNA technologies. And when thinking through who to speak, we obviously want people from agencies to go. So we think through agencies that are connected to RNA technologies, and we kind of go for the person that's the top authority there, because that's just the pool that Research America has. And then we want to get a patient perspective because we know that we're going to be talking to people on the Hill and they are representatives of people. And so you want to have a person there who knows kind of the breadth of the concerns with the people, so a patient advocate. And so we think through different advocacy networks for RNA technologies, or maybe some diseases that are currently in the news for using RNA technologies, and kind of going from there. And then we know we want to have a scientist, obviously, because they are going to be able to explain the science. So we think through, okay, who are the more prominent scientists here that we want to reach out to and why? Again, do we want to connect it more so to a disease, or do we want to keep it very general? So again, like, it really depends on what's your audience and what's your purpose. So quickly tell me, like 5 seconds, what your project is, and I can help you determine.
Yeah, I'm working with JP on SCOPE, which is scientific outreach and public engagement. And I guess our main in-person event is going to be at a brewery where we're creating beer labels that are kind of science-based.
Ooh, okay, okay. And so who is your audience there? I heard public, but when you say public, do you mean the general public? Do you mean the public as in students? Like who are you trying to reach?
Yeah, I guess technically it's a two-part event. For the first part, we definitely want to get it into like general public and not just scientists and kind of outside of our university bubbles. And so this will happen in Chapel Hill and trying to get community members involved.
Okay. So ideally there you would want, community partners, maybe community representatives. There are plenty of science outreach nonprofits that exist state by state, and they might have not only pull with your members of the general public, but also they'll have like speaker recommendations there, or maybe somebody from there can speak. You see? So you kind of following that logic of, okay, who do we want to reach, and what makes sense to convey what we want to convey to our audience. And that'll help you with speakers. Okay.
I guess maybe I don't want to take up too much time, but if I could have maybe re-clarify my question a bit of the specific scenario I was thinking was like, say that you want the president or kind of the head of, whatever or community organization to come. And if they're not able to come, would you kind of recommend almost going down the step ladder of to like the vice president and then so and so and so and so? Or would you recommend just then going to a different organization?
Say, ask first the president, hey, if you can't come, is there anybody on your team that you would recommend to speak about this? Because they'll probably have a good recommendation of somebody immediately on their team, so that you're not arbitrarily reaching out to folks. And I would suggest doing that before you move on to another organization, because just to save time, especially if you've already gotten their ear.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
So, talking through logistics, here are a few things that you would want to think through. Platform and time is always going to be important. If you're doing a virtual event, you have more flexibility with what time you can do, and and for attendees, it tends to be more flexible. And then time, of course, like if again, a virtual event, you can probably schedule during lunch so people can kind of eat and watch, or, have an early morning event where, people are first thing in the morning, bright and early, ready to go, giving you interaction, things like that. Having that in mind is important. Format, so do you want a panel? Do you want a keynote address? Do you want a roundtable? Do you want a debate? Do you want a workshop? How interactive do you want your audience to be? Because that will also inform the types of events or the types of venues that you would want, or the platforms that you would want if you're doing a virtual event. Technical needs. With every venue, if you're doing an in-person event, I highly recommend inquiring about their AV capabilities, because you do not want to get to the point where you have chosen this event, you've given them your money, you've paid the down payment, and then they can't support a screen, or they can't support, some things that you need. So always have that up front. Say, hey, this is what we need. We're thinking, for instance, if you're doing a panel and it's in person, you're going to need mics. So what type of mics does the venue have? Do you want your people to be sitting? Do you want them to have a table? Do you want them to stand? Do you want do you want like a podium? And then, just have that in mind, and that will inform what technical needs you would need. And then finally, event recording. That is so important, like whether or not you want to record your event, because that goes into your ask with speakers. Sometimes, like for instance, if you are doing a workshop-based event, sometimes the speaker that you invite might be selling this workshop material, so they don't want the recording to be out there for free. So just having an idea of whether or not you want to record. And then if you're doing an in-person event, you would have to think through videographers and capabilities for cameras, and how many outlets are around, so that, you would be able to have your media and have the recording go. And then again, it's a bit more easy on Zoom, but thinking through those things ahead of time will just save you both time and money in the long run. So following that line of thinking, we're going to go a little bit into some pre-event things that you should think of. If you are doing a panel, it's always great to get your panelists together or individual if the scheduling doesn't permit, to do a call, just a quick call so that you go through what kinds of questions you're going to ask, answer any questions that they might have, work through any like details. Like sometimes, people, when you tell them, hey, I would like you to speak, they're going to ask you, oh, do you need me to present slides, or do you need me to just talk? And so having that call will just kind of alleviate the amounts of questions that you get towards the event day. And also helps you to maybe discover some logistics that you didn't think through in the beginning. You also want to think through collateral materials. So going back to the purpose of your event, if you're planning, for instance, to have like a Hill briefing for strictly people on the Hill, then you want a leave behind of some sort so that they have a paper to bring back to their representative if it's a staffer, or for a representative, have like a quick one pager of what they just witnessed and what your message was. Thinking through a run of show, which is basically like a script plan for the entirety of the show from start to finish. Just having that for yourself is a very big help. PowerPoints, of course. So what kinds of media? Like, for instance, if you are doing multiple panels in one day, do you want to have a PowerPoint in the background to show who is speaking? Do you want to have some kind of visual aid so that the audience doesn't get bored? Thinking through those kinds of logistics will also just be helpful for your event. And then communications, do you want to live tweet your event? Do you want to preset some tweets or some posts that might say, hey, our event is going on today, you can still register, here's who's speaking right now, or we had a wonderful discussion with so-and-so, if you are interested in any further programming from our group, you can go to this link. Really be creative with the ways that you communicate your event during and before and after the event. So if you're in person, I kind of broke this up by in person and virtual. So for in person, you want to keep a running checklist of things that you need for the event. So you want all the contacts for all of your vendors, again, having that contingency plan, because you do not want to have any problems. Speaker contacts, always have the speaker's number, the speaker's email, their personal cell number, and their assistant's personal cell number. Because an example of this, I can tell you, is at Research America, we had Dr. Diana Bianchi, I'm not trying to call anybody out, to speak at our one of our panels, and we couldn't find her. We could not find her. We were like, where is Dr. Bianchi? And if we did not have, and we ended up, like, it literally was so late that we switched panels mid-event because we just could not find her. And so we were calling, like, we were emailing, we were calling, we were texting her assistant and things like that. And it turns out she had gotten stuck in traffic and, all of this stuff had happened. But if we only had her email, we would have never been able to contact her. Does it make sense? So you want to keep those types of things at the ready so that you're not scrambling if anything happens. Again, a complete run of show. That's important for both in-person or virtual events. You want to have, okay, at 6 o'clock, we're going to do this. 6:15, we're going to do this. You know, really plan out your event and have the script at the ready and printed in front of you so that there's no technical way that it could fall through if it's printed. Clearly define volunteer and staff roles. A lot of people will ask you, hey, I want to volunteer. So thinking of how you want to set up the event, how you want it to run will help you. Okay, so we need a person here greeting. We need a person here for registration. We need a person who, you know, can direct people to go to the right way. And so thinking through those roles and clearly defining them and saying, hey, at 6 o'clock, you have to be here doing this will just help make the event run seamless and smoothly. Emergency exits and venue floor plan. That might seem trivial, but it's very important because you don't want, you know, a fire alarm going off and everybody scrambling. You don't want for people to ask you certain things about the event, like, hey, where's the bathroom? And then you don't know. So having all of those things at the ready and in front of you is just going to help make the events run smooth. For virtual, you kind of want to think through, do you want to do meeting or webinar? So with meetings, you get all the people are visible, so that's a bit more interactive. You have a good chance of having an active discussion, especially if at the top of the meeting you say, hey, we want this to be as interactive as possible, so please turn your cameras on, similar to how Lori did it. You can use breakout rooms, chats, raise hand, etc., and anybody with the link can join, versus a webinar is more suitable for just like a fireside chat where there's no Q&A, or just like a kind of just like a talk, rather than, so it's less interactive. The audience, you cannot see the audience, but the audience can see you. It's better if you're focusing strictly on presentation or strictly on that conversation that you're having with the speaker. You can use the Q&A chat, but you don't have the opportunity to use raise hand. And you need a special link to join. And, you know, there's a bit more to it. So just thinking through, do you want that more interactive or do you want it to be less interactive and more just focused on the content? That'll help you. So kind of going in line with, as I said before, having clear defined jobs and roles for everybody. It is always useful to have somebody who is not actively doing something on your virtual event to monitor the Q&A and chat. Because during the event, this is telltale at the Early Career Summit, which is a strictly virtual event for early career professionals, and we do it either once every week throughout the month of June or one day in June. It just depends on how much time and how much time our volunteer speakers can give us. But we have a person monitoring the chat, and that's their only job for the whole event. Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to have people saying, hey, I couldn't get into the meeting, like, can you help me? Or, hey, you know, can I get the contact information? Are these slides going to be available? You know, just somebody to answer the question so that it doesn't seem like you're icing people out, so that they can stay for the duration of your event. And the use of the chat can also be useful for icebreakers or a way to warm up the crowd. So, you know, having a person that monitors the chat strictly will be great for helping your virtual event to be seamless and smooth. So post-event, please, please, please give thank you notes to your speakers. They have volunteered their time, even if you paid them. You've paid them for a service, they're volunteering their time. However, giving them that thank you will ensure that you have a connection for the next time you want to do this event or for any event that you want to do. And it's just professional in general. Send a thank you note. It doesn't have to be something that's like long and like grovelly. Something as simple as, hey, thank you so much for speaking at our event. We appreciated it, and we know that our attendees also appreciated it. And then moving on. Also doing that for vendors will help create relationships between you and vendors, which can ultimately help your budget. So just writing those thank you notes, you can do them ahead of time, you can do them like the day after, but sending them out and having them done is very important. Audience survey, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's a great way to get metrics and data and contact information from your attendees. And then post-event write-up, you want to talk about your event. You want to talk about how great it was, what went right, what went wrong, things like that, and post it on a blog or a newsletter, submit it to your school's newsletter so that people know that the event happened. And then they'll be like, oh, I missed it. It seemed like it was great. Let me reach out for the next one. And so that's how you build out a lasting audience, especially if you have initiatives that you intend to go year over year. You know, you don't want to just be a flash in the pan. You want to really stick around and really stay in people's minds. And so that's a great way to kind of keep it interactive. So your post-event survey. Post-event survey can gather demographic data. You can collect contact information. You can determine attendee interest in programming. You can gather some ideas from your community. What else would you like to see from us? Like, are there any like concerns you feel like we did not cover? What do you want to see from us? Keep it short. Do not inundate your attendees with questions. They're not trying to take a personality test. They are taking a simple event survey. So I keep it at like 10 of your most important questions. And that actually will prove to be quite difficult because there's so much types of data that you can gather from your attendees, but you want to get the most important data that will tell the best story. So picking the 10 best questions that you can think of will be very important there. And in that line of thinking, you want to think of the metrics that you want. Did you want to show that your event was well attended? Then you don't necessarily need to know about satisfaction. If you want to know if people liked the content or if you should do more of that, then you want to ask questions about that. For larger events, like multi-day events, it's kind of okay to have a little bit more questions than 10. But for a one-day event, definitely keep it 10 and under.
Jasmine, just sorry to interrupt. Just in the interest of time to make sure that we get to you know, some of walkthrough examples with the groups. About how many slides do you have left to go?
Just this one. And key
Oh,
takeaways.
okay, great. Awesome. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, we're almost done. So metrics that make an event successful, and I'll go really quickly. How many people took the survey? I mean, if a person is interested in the event, they're going to want to let you know. And how many people took the survey is a great way to measure success. You say, okay, out of the 250 people who signed up, let's say 80% took the survey and said XYZ about the event. Great metrics. Who participated? Did you reach your audience? You know, gathering, hey, are you an early career scientist? Are you a person who is just a student? Like, who are you? Registration versus attendance, you want to think through attrition. So attrition is the measure of how many people signed up versus how many people actually came. And so you want to keep that high so you can say, hey, we had over 60% people show up to our event. And that's wonderful because we had XYZ, you know, expectations for how many people would show up, and it's an event, whatever. And put it all together. If you are doing, especially if you're doing a long-standing event and you know, your student group, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be passing your torch to another student who's going to have to take the reins. So having a history doc with all of your metrics available will help inform them about how the program has been doing and where they should go. So key takeaways, keep the program goals in mind. Keep yourself organized and always follow up with your attendees. Okay, stopping there, questions, and we can do a quick exercise.
All right, thank you so much for that, Jasmine. That was a lot of great tips and information. I hope you guys were, taking notes. And I'm sure Jasmine's presentation gave you some fresh ideas of things you hadn't thought about. So I hope you took a lot out of this workshop. Are there any groups who would like to volunteer to be an example for the rest? About any step in the event planning process, whether it's like pre-event, during, or post, or maybe in some specific questions about anything that Jasmine talked about, like surveys and metrics. We'd love to help you with like your specific projects.
I have a small conundrum that I'd be willing to share.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'm Hannah. I'm representing Science Policy Society at Penn State. And I'm struggling because I'm at the intersection of finding speakers, booking a venue, and picking a date. And those three things seem to continuously not line up over and over again, like speaker availability, venue availability, and proper date. So
Mhm.
I was wondering if you'd recommend an order, like date, venue, speakers, or speakers, date, venue, or, what order would you recommend doing that in?
Okay, so don't completely hold me to, like, this is not the gospel for this, but as far as your specific conundrum, I think it would be best for you to do the venue and date first and then consider speakers, because that way you have a clear ask for your speakers. You're like, hey, we're going to have an event here at this time. Are you available to speak? If not, is there anybody on your team who is
Cool.
available to speak?
Yeah.
Now, the only
Makes
way I would say that that's kind of different is if you are working with a funder who has a specific idea in mind. So then they will have speakers in mind and they'll say, hey, we really would like to see, like, for instance, a non-government organization represented. Here's a list of ones that we work with. Can you find somebody from these? That happens quite often when you're working with funders. And so that kind of like throws a little bit of a wrench in your process, but you just kind of reprioritize and start with hey, I want you to speak at this event on behalf of this funder.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For
Thank
your
you.
specific conundrum, I would definitely say get your venue and your date first.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It would also be great to hear if any of you are kind of further along in the process, or if you have some experience with event planning, sharing some best practices as students, what has worked for you to as students, putting either virtual events together or in-person events together, so you kind of learn from each other.
Well, now the subject line is going to be consent form for Penn Medicine Studies.
Hello, my name is Naman. I am working with the Reverse Science Fair at the University of Pennsylvania, and I wanted to share some things that I've noticed with event planning that have worked in my favor in the past. So I think one thing that has really helped me previously is if you have a team that you're working with, let's say if it's like 10, 15 people, making sure that like you only invite them to meetings that are relevant for them. Like if you have a team of 10 people and let's say like 3 of those people are work for like the marketing team, don't send like an email to everyone, be like, hey, marketing is meeting today. Most people have other things on their plate anyway. Like this is something that they're doing. They are expending their time for your cause, and it's important to not push them with like constant communication. Only invite them to things that they're relevant with. And then if you guys do decide to do like a big meeting, make sure that like you do it like less frequently, maybe once or twice a month, where you kind of update everybody, but the regular everyday communication between teams should remain only with those people who are relevant to that.
For pulmonary artery disease, the study involved sharing.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. Something that we do is we kind of prep. We have one prep call with everybody on it, and that's at the very tail end of planning after everybody has an idea of what they're doing, what they need to do, where they need to be, and we just put it all together at the end and we say, okay, so here's how the event's supposed to go. Is everybody on the same page? But throughout the planning of the event, we meet in smaller groups. Like if we have an outreach, like if we're doing an outreach meeting, we only meet with the people who are interested in helping with outreach. If we're doing a venue kind of thing, we want to hang just with the venue people. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I see one in here. It says, one thing I want to do is take these slides and make a checklist during this. I realized we were also having communities under the age of 21. Now we're thinking of creating these science beer labels for our non-alcoholic. Perfect. See, look at that. Who else? Anybody brave enough? Oh no. Oh, I hid the slide. It's fine. Hold on. Well, anybody brave enough that wants to kind of just go through this process and say, what's your goal? What's your budget? Who is your audience? What type, or at least what sectors from speakers do you want to hear from? And we can talk through if you have any AV needs or if you want to do in person or virtual.
I can go if nobody's going. So my group is called The Lab. It's a science-inspired improv group. So the idea of the project is to interview a scientist and then use the interview as an inspiration to do improv comedy. So we interview the scientist in 3 sections. The first section highlights the person's personal life, how they got into science, but it focuses on humanizing scientists rather than the actual work. So then we do a small set based off of that. Sorry, excuse me. Then the second part of the show is their work. So they talk about their work. So then we do a little section based off of that. And the third part, we ask them about career, like how, if a young person wants to get into research, what should they do? So that's like the wrap up. What we're doing is we're trying to combine serious science communication with the improv comedy. So I'm collaborating with Columbia University's neuroscience outreach program. So we're planning to have sort of a booth, or either a booth or flyers that we print out and leave on the seats so that they can kind of get, so that they can get into free programs at Columbia University with the interest we piqued in them from the show. So I think the challenge is kind of balancing the serious science communication and using the platform of improv comedy to get them excited so that they actually go to these science communication outreach programs we actually want them to be involved in. So this is the first time combining these two components. So I think, I don't know how it's going to work out, but I can tell you the goal of this particular program is to make that jump so that the audience who come to our show actually get interested in neuroscience and kind of like get into the programs. So this is we have booked our first show at a theater. So it's going to be during Brain Awareness Week in March.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's a great way to promote your event.
Yeah. So the first show is going to be adults only, but the last show that we want to have 3 shows, and the third show we want to do in Harlem. It's going to be a kid-friendly show, and we're trying to have that in a library so that kids who come to that space can come and see the show, and then maybe talk to the scientist after. But that's the most challenging show, I think, because we're more used to the adult shows. We're going to do for the first two shows, just the adult version, and then have them interact with the QNO, like the community, Columbia University Neuroscience Outreach booth. So that's the goal. Our budget is 1,800. I think so. The first venue we have is called Caveat, which have like means for virtual, like live streaming as well. So we have an in-person audience and live streaming audience. So the idea is from the live stream, we're going to create reels for the future, to create promotional materials for the next two shows.
That is fabulous. Can I recommend
Yeah.
something for you?
Mm-hmm.
I do not recommend saying that the event will be live streamed until the final few communications. Because I find that when you tell people, hey, it's going to be live streamed, they won't show up. Because
Okay.
I'll catch it later, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of keeping that in your back pocket. Sometimes we'll just keep it for like, if somebody asks and we'll volunteer that information. But I know that be very wary of stuff like that when you're promoting, because again, if it's live streamed or if it's like a hybrid, especially if it's a hybrid event, people will straight up choose the option to not show up. And you want to fill that room. So you want to give the people kind of the illusion that there's no other way that they're going to get this media. So if you want to see this comedy show, you got to show up.
Yeah. Okay.
And then at the last minute, be like, oh yeah, it's live stream.
Well, yeah, that's actually really helpful. Yeah. So we're going to use that, and then we're going to make little reels from that show to kind of promote the next two shows. So that's the plan. We are considering the ways we're considering to cut down costs. So I think so the Caveat show, from the budget, we are allocating a substantial amount of money for the Caveat show because we're going to have the live stream, the video, which we can then use for the promotional material. So I thought that was the best way to go about it. The library show is going to be free. So the Word Up community will give us, it's a nonprofit. And the other show is not going to be free. So basically the Caveat show, the first show we're having is also free to the audience. Like it's pay what you want, but it's free. So that maybe draws a larger crowd. But I've heard from theaters that just because it's free doesn't mean people show up. Like people, like ostensibly it makes it feel like people show up to free shows, but actually that's not the case. So, yeah, I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
I have a lot of thoughts. So a good way, especially if it's a free show and you're doing it for kids, just tell local schools. Make it a school thing, saying, hey, we're having a kid-friendly show. It's STEM focused. We are trying to, our goal is to do XYZ. Send that to the principal, and then they'll most likely tell the teachers, and then the teachers will tell the students, who will tell the parents, and it kind of goes from there. And it helps that it's free. So that's like a selling point that you can use, because if people don't have to invest any money in something, they'll just be willing to promote it a little bit more.
Do you have any ideas for adult shows, like how we can kind of make it more interesting for an adult?
Adult shows are a little tougher, but I think because it's improv, people like improv. Like I did a science comedy troupe a few years back, and one of the main draws was the fact that it was one scientist, because at the time it was in the thick of the pandemic. So people were very interested in speaking with the scientist and kind of getting that perspective of what's going on just in the world. And so we had kind of that boost of interest because of situationally what was going on, but really selling the idea that it is a comedy thing will be a draw because people like to be entertained. Making it more like less comedy focused and more science focused will probably, you can do that in practice, but in promotion, it's all about the comedy. You really want to put that foot forward.
Cool. Yeah. Channels of communication, I think in the flyers we'll have information to both our improv team and also like QNO, the Columbia University Neuroscience Outreach Program. For speakers, yeah, we just have one speaker, and it's an interview, so we have a few set questions, but otherwise it kind of changes based on what the improvisers ask. So the interview is actually conducted with the entire team and kind of like rotating. We have a rotating format where people ask questions, so it's not really limited to one person, and it's a bit conversational. We want to keep it that way, so to kind of have it very relaxed, to have the scientists relax, and also everyone kind of, I just like the tone is very conversational. Yeah, I think logistics, we have the show, first show booked. So I think I have to figure out a bio that pops like for the show. We have made some, we are having an Instagram ad campaign, which will start 2 weeks before the show. And that has information about the show. Yeah, so part of our budget is for the Instagram ad campaign. And yeah, I think during and post event, we will have pre and post event needs, in the sense like we're going to promote the show before, and post event we probably have some reels that we post. I think the biggest challenge of this format is how do we kind of weave in the outreach, the real outreach. So one option is we have an interval somewhere during the show where we tell them to get drinks, but also check out the booth, the QNO booth. But I think for one of our venues that won't be possible because the space isn't very big, so there's no possibility of a booth. So, if you have any ideas of how we can kind of point them to the resources.
Yeah, I do. Intermission games. I like the idea of having intermission, like for people to take a bathroom break or what have you. And in that intermission, kind of have like a rolling like PowerPoint with, just like adverts of, hey, this is something like, that is
Yeah,
available
okay, that's
to
a great
you.
idea.
With
Yeah.
QR codes. I love a QR code because people, if they see something interesting, they will snap it on their phone. And it's always nice to go that extra mile and have that QR code at the ready so that they can go to a website and they'll have it on their phone. It's very convenient. So that's one of my, so I get inspiration from movie theaters there. They do a really effective job at presenting just information to people, before the movie. So having like a nice little like slideshow or something like that for intermission.
That's actually a great idea because I feel like we can cut down on the flyer cost by just having a 15-minute slideshow during the session. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. This is very helpful.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for the opportunity for me to talk about it.
Of course, and I'm definitely very available via email, and here's my contact information as well as Research America. So if you want to speak a little bit more about ways to just kind of improve your event, improve the visibility, what have you, talk through what we just talked through, I'm open to it. I've been doing this for a few years now, and it's quite fun.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Jasmine. And thank you. I don't want to mispronounce it. Is Ray? How do you said you go by Ray, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
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 Yeah. I'm gonna go with that. Thank you so much, Ray, for being brave and sharing your specific projects. Pre, during, and post event workup. That was great. I know we went over for time, so thank you guys for being able to stay over. I hope you got a lot out of that really specific example. Just to quickly wrap up, Wyatt will be sending out a post workshop email. We'll include Jasmine's contact information in that.
And the slides you can make
Yes. Is gracious enough to have us share a slide, so we'll link to that in the Google shared folder that we have for you guys. Our next workshop will be
just to butt in right here. Also a recording of this meeting in case you want to come back and look at the specific examples.
right. It kind of like the welcome webinar. It'll be a private link just for the micrograntee groups. It won't be a public on our YouTube channel. Our next workshop will be next month. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it will
We're
be.
still finalizing the date. It's going to be in late March.
Okay, great. It'll be on public attitudes towards science and science communication workshop. So that'll also be a really great practical workshop for you guys to attend. Right, so I will leave it there because we've already gone 13 minutes over. Again, thank you so much, guys, for sticking around. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.